This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Bruce Lipton, the stem cell biologist and best-selling author who promotes the idea that genes and DNA can be manipulated by a person's beliefs. Your pioneering research at Stanford University on cloned stem cells presaged the revolutionary new field of epigenetics. Your books, The Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, and The Honeymoon Effect, explain the mechanisms by which consciousness and perceptions control our health, genetics, and the character of our lives. Bruce, welcome to London Real.
I am so happy to be here because we have some wonderful stuff to talk about, exciting stuff.
I can't wait. And you know, I have been conflicted coming up to this show because I'm kind of from two different worlds. And let me explain that, and then you can jump in and tell me like about your worlds. But as I said earlier, I went to school on the East Coast at MIT. And so I was trained as an engineer, and I was the science kid at school, and I was taught these are this ways and this is how the world works. And yet, the last 6 years on London Real, I've been talking with people that have incredible ideas about consciousness, about spirituality, about energy. And so when I hear you talking about DNA, which I was taught is one thing, and yet now consciousness and perceptions and beliefs and how it can affect biology, two parts of my brain conflict and collide. I'm sure you get this a lot. And so in one sense, it's like someone is saying what my religion used to be, science is wrong, and yet part of my heart knows that it's not right. So how does that sound to you?
Well, it's very interesting because I had to deal with the issue of teaching medical students and going into the classroom, teaching conventional curriculum is the old genes control life story. And so I go in there and teach that to medical students, but when I'd go back in my lab and look at my research on stem cells, my research revealed conclusively that the environment in which the cells live determine genetic activity. So it's a complete opposite of what I was teaching in medical school. And the difference is profound. The conventional story, almost everybody's programmed with genes turn on and off, and then they control the character of your life. And if you buy that story, which I did and which I was teaching, it really means that we're victims of our heredity. We didn't pick the genes as far as we know. You don't like the traits, you can't change the genes, and the genes appear to turn on and off by themselves. All of a sudden you see your life is not under your control, it's under the control of the genes. And a lot of people feel that way looking at their family history and going, oh my goodness, I might have the genes for cancer or whatever it is.
Right, and things like 23andMe now probably just reinforce that idea. Because you can go to 23andMe and then you can look at all of your danger zones. Because I did the genetic test and people said, oh, are you supposed to have all these things? And I'm like, I didn't even look, because does that make it worse?
Well, it does, because since consciousness is involved, if once I feed you with an idea that you are susceptible to something, look, I can feed you with an idea that this pill that we just got from the pharmaceutical company, it's the greatest, best thing for your issue. And I give you this pill and you get better. And then later you find out it was a sugar pill and everybody goes, yeah, that's called the placebo effect. And I go, what does it really mean? I said, you didn't get healed by the pill, you got healed by the belief in the pill. And I go, well, yeah, that's what placebo is all about. And at least minimum of one third of all medical intervention is, it's a placebo effect where the healing comes from. And everybody goes, yeah, I know about the placebo. I go, yeah, but that's a result of positive thinking. What about negative thinking? And this is what we don't talk about, but the reality is it's equally powerful in regard to affecting your biology as is positive thinking, but it works in the opposite direction. A negative thought is called the nocebo effect. Can cause any disease and you can die. If you believe you're going to die, you can die from the belief. So we really have to watch out because, as psychologists would tell us, 70% or more of our thoughts are negative and redundant, replaying the same negative thoughts. I go, if thoughts had nothing to do with it, fine. But thoughts, positive or negative, shape our biology. And all of a sudden it says, well, now it's time to wake up because our negative thinking is manifesting a negative life experience.
Right, and I do believe that's true, and I want to get to that definitely. But back to this genetics, when you actually talk to people, I guess, like you said, we've been sold early on in our lives that, okay, this great thing came out, it's the double helix and Watson and Crick, and it determines all these things. It happened in the 60s and 70s, and yet now we believe it's gospel. And you're here to say that it's not predetermined. There's other things going on besides your DNA controlling your future. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. But it's not just me saying this. It was me saying this when I first started doing this work in 1970. And my research was repeatable every day. I could take stem cells are embryonic cells, so they have no potential until you put them in an environment. And then, depending on the culture medium, by the chemistry of the culture medium, I can make the cell become a muscle cell, change the culture medium, make the same cell become a bone cell, or change it again and make the same cell become a fat cell. And genetically, the cell is the same. It was the environment that I was changing. And I started talking about that long before the new science called epigenetics had come into vogue, which was 1990. So I was like 20 years ahead. And of course, for much of that time, my colleagues looked at me like I was a crazy guy because everybody knew the conventional dogma. And I was, coming up with a whole different line of belief about it. And now it's come into mainstream. The only problem is this: when you invest so much money into a belief system, and then a belief system isn't really right, you try to hold on as long as you can, because if you spend hundreds of billions of dollars in this belief, you don't want to just go, oh, okay, we'll just change it. So it's a struggle, but the reality is coming forward, and the public is just becoming aware of it, and it's a revolution because, as I said, if you believe genes control your life, you're a victim of your heredity.
Right. Can you explain epigenetics to people who don't know what that is?
Yeah. Okay. When I say genetic control, that's the belief that genes control our characters. When I say epigenetic control, almost sounds the same, but epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, literally it's control above the genes. And this is what we now recognize, that the environment, and very specifically our perception of the environment, changes our genetic activity. So that means, well, wait, that's not a victim, because I can change my environment, I can change my perception, and all of a sudden, if I can do that, then I can control my genes. Well, we're going from victim to mastery, from genetics to epigenetics.
Okay. I had a brand new baby boy 3 days ago. He was born. He's gorgeous, of course. And but I'm wondering, if I had that same boy 2 years from now, I mean, it's coming from my same genes, so would he not also be the same? As in, part of my genetic code, I'm not going to be able to change no matter how positive I think. Is that correct?
Not really.
Really?
You can change.
But enough to be passed on to him differently?
Oh yeah, very differently. So, for example, when when parents have one child, they raise it like the first child. Okay, I raise the child this way. After that, if they have a second child, well, they already have all the different experiences of having a child, so they raise the second child different than they did the first child, et cetera, to the third. What's the point is, well, I can start with the same genetics, like my stem cells, same genetics, but it's the environment in which the genes are found that will determine the character and expression.
Okay, so those two boys might express their genetics differently. They could be two different people, but they would still have the same chromosomes and basic DNA structure.
Yeah, now what people have to understand about epigenetics is it changes the reading of the gene. It does not change the gene. Right. If you're born with gene X, you're always going to have gene X, but how will it express itself? And I go, well, it depends on your life and your character, your behavior, your environment. And this is why getting a gene readout, getting your card and reading your genes, it actually, one of the head researchers in the Human Genome Project, upon receiving his own gene readout, it was a quote, and he said he laughed when he read this, because he said, by looking at that, I can't tell if I have blue eyes or brown eyes. I can read all the genes, but I can't tell you what the outcome is going to be, because it's genes plus environment. If it was just genes, I would be able to tell you exactly, here's what's going to happen. But most of that is changeable by how you live and where you live. And as a result, there's only about 7 diseases that are caused by one gene, such as hemophilia, cerebral palsy is another one, Tay-Sachs disease is one. So you got about 7 major diseases, only one gene. If you got that gene, and the gene card shows it, okay, you got that gene, you're going to deal with it. All the other diseases are multiple genes. Cancer is a minimum of 12 to 14 genes, so it's not an accident. You can't change one gene and get cancer. You have to change 12 to 14 genes, and all of a sudden, then probability is a chance. It's like, no, we are creating a cancer, and we can uncreate a cancer. People have spontaneous remissions, but they change it not by changing their biology, but by changing their mind.
Okay, but if I'm born Caucasian with blue eyes,
yes,
that I won't be changing with epigenetics.
Not easily, not easily. Okay, and so let's separate genes in 2 aspects. There's genes that make a physical body. So that's like the robotic. Here it is. It's a machine, okay? But there are genes on how it's going to behave and how it's going to respond and what kind of issues it's going to face. Those are the changeable ones that we change from day to day, your behavior and the consequences of your behavior. Okay? It's not changing the genes, it's changing the readout. So the simple point is a gene is a blueprint. Right away, this is the biggest problem in the world because the idea of a gene must be an illusion to a lot of people. There's something called a gene and it turns on and off. And it goes, no, let's clear this up. A body is made out of 100,000 different protein building blocks. It's sort of like a giant Lego kit. 100,000 different pieces. You can assemble the pieces this way, make a muscle cell, assemble them this way, make a brain cell. Different pieces, you can plug them together. The pieces are called proteins. They're very complex. The question is, where the heck do the proteins come from? And the answer is, the DNA is a blueprint to make a protein. This is where things get dicey after that for this reason. It's a blueprint. That's exactly what it is. And I say, why is it relevant? I say, well, you go into an architect's office and she's working on a blueprint. You lean over her shoulder and you say, excuse me, is your blueprint on or off? And she would look at you and go, what, are you crazy? It's a blueprint. There's no on or off. Precisely. A gene is a blueprint. It has no ability to turn itself on or off. A gene doesn't know what the hell it does. And the idea is giving all this power to a blueprint has been an error all these years. It's not the blueprint that we're concerned about. It's the contractor who reads the blueprint. And I say, well, what in my biology is the contractor? I go, the mind.
Okay. Talk to me about your journey discovering this and your book, The Biology of Belief. As you said earlier, you were teaching these medical students one thing, and yet in your Petri dish, you're finding out that other things are happening. How did you get this message out? How was it received? And now, you've taken it many levels further.
Yeah.
With your own consciousness.
It's only been about 30, 40 years since I recognized it, so I had a lot of opportunity to work on this. But the basic idea is simply this. Let's relate my laboratory experience to a human body so that we can connect it. A stem cell is an embryonic cell. We have billions of stem cells in our body right now. I don't care what age you are. The reason is very simple. Every one of us, every day, loses hundreds of billions of cells, normal attrition, normal death. I mean, just in the time we were talking, we probably lost 1 billion red cells in that time. And you got to replace 1 billion red cells. The lining of the digestive tract, 20-some feet of lining, the cells are replaced every 3 days. Well, that's, nearly 1 trillion cells. It's like, well, every day we're losing hundreds of billions. How many days in a row can you go if you don't replace? And the answer is not very far. So I say, we have stem cells, embryonic cells, that will replace them. So that's what a stem cell is.
Okay.
So I put a stem cell in a Petri dish, it's embryonic cell, and I make culture medium. And this is really important because we're going to talk about the connection. The culture medium is the equivalent of blood. If I grow human cells, I look at human blood, the composition, and try to make a version of it in a lab. If I grow mouse cells, I look at mouse blood and make a medium to grow mouse cells in. So I make the medium, and since I'm making it, I can change some of the composition. I'm synthesizing it. That's what I did. So here's the story, very simple. I put one stem cell in a Petri dish by itself, and it divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's 1, then there's 2, 4, 8, 16, doubling. 1 week, 30,000 cells in the Petri dish. But they're all genetically identical because they came from one parent. So I have 30,000 genetically identical cells. I split the cells into 3 Petri dishes, so I have genetically identical cells in 3 dishes. But I changed the composition of the culture medium, a little chemistry change, in each of the dishes. So I have genetically identical cells, but slightly different culture medium. And in one set of dishes, the cells form muscle. In a second set, they form bone. In a third set, the cells form fat cells. You say, well, what controlled the fate? I say, they were all genetically identical. So it wasn't the genes. They all had the exact same genes. The only thing that was different was the environment.
Okay. So it's how those genes were expressed.
Right, but it was a reflection of the environment. So the cell is adjusting itself to the environment. Change the environment, it changes its adjustment.
Okay. So you have this quantum leap in observation. You're like, whoa, what do your colleagues say in academia?
Well, they looked at me as a weird kind of guy, because everybody was in the genes. Genes were that was before the Genome Project. That was the building up of our genetic repertoire of everything's genes. And I'm the only guy out there in the corner going, it's not the genes. And they looked at me like the only guy out there in the corner and sort of dismissed it because it didn't fit their conventional story. As a matter of fact, the first time I gave a lecture on it in front of my colleagues, I had left the university, but I come back because I needed a scientific audience to describe what I was working on. At the end of my talk, I said, "Thank you very much." And this room full of people, they just stared at me it was dead silent. I felt like really crazy. I was in front of the room. I said, "Thank you," and they just stared at me. And one guy in the back of the room, I remember he went twice. I mean, it was so clear. And when he did that, everybody looked at him. And then he just put his hands down in his lap. And then about a minute later, they all stood up and they walked out, all my colleagues. And I thought I was crazy.
Why does this happen? Why does that kind of thing happen? Because we think science is fact, but science is based on what's in vogue, right? And it's based on trends and all of that stuff, going back to Galileo or any of these things.
Every
right?
time a scientist has come up with a new idea, that scientist was always claimed as being weird or crazy or, way off track. And then those new ideas come in. Howard Temin.
Or sometimes they're just the weirdo.
Well, yeah, that's where you got to have to distinguish. Where does weirdo leave off and interesting person begin? Okay, and the fact was this: my research was repeatable every day, and you could predict it. The point about that is, in science, prediction means you understand something. If you can predict it before you do it, then you have some insight. My predictions were always accurate. It just didn't fit the conventional storyline, and there was a choice. Recant. You're a heretic. Recant and just say, okay, I was wrong. And I said, no. Every time I was looking around, the results were coming in different ways from different places. So I held on to that. And it took about 20 years before science owned what I was talking about and gave it the name epigenetics. That's the new science.
Okay, which is the belief that through your behavior, you can kind of alter your genetics, pass those on, express it differently. I'm probably using the wrong words.
Well, it's pretty close right now.
People talk about it as a reality, although it's still not totally understood or totally believed.
But
it can be replicated.
It is now.
Okay.
It is a science. It's a hard science, and it's the leading edge. Now, I'll tell you where the problem comes from. Not so much the scientists, but the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason why this becomes important is because the pharmaceutical industry runs the show in medicine. And if you could put this kind of healing that I'm talking about into a capsule or tablet, they'd be talking about it right now. But this is a consciousness healing, and you can't sell it. And so what's the result? They're not interested in it. And they, through their money, which is massive, actually determine the curriculum in a medical school. And the idea is, well, what's relevant? Well, if you understand epigenetics, you don't need the pharmaceutical industry. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's not in the interest of one of the biggest industries on this planet to say you can heal yourself without drugs. And I go, absolutely.
For people that don't understand that concept, and I do because people have talked about it on London Real before, but talk to me about how the pharmaceutical companies can control the discussion in the entire medical industry. And would most doctors agree with that, first of all? And second of all, how do they do it?
Well, first of all, how do they do it is money. Money is big. Money, if I give grants, you can study what I'm going to give you a grant for. So they direct a lot of research with their billions and billions of dollars. And it was actually interesting, the British Journal of Medicine had a review looking at the same research and determining if the research was funded by government money or the research was funded by private money, like pharmaceutical agency. The results came out 4 to 5 times more in the favor of the private industry when they paid for it, as compared to when it was just government money without any special interest behind it. So right away, there's a manipulation of the data. You go, well, you mean these guys are cheating? I go, well, they're selecting the data to fit. Why? Because if I'm getting a grant and I write back, I say, sorry, pharmaceutical, I checked all your stuff and it doesn't work. I'm not going to get another grant from them.
So are the doctors lying?
Well, they're not lying, but they pick data that supports their point. So they already have a conclusion before they even did the experiment.
Okay, even in a double-blind study.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a double-blind study.
Okay, because people bring their own preconceptions to any study.
Absolutely.
And maybe even the pharmaceuticals are choosing which things to fund because they know they'll get the results.
Absolutely, and one of the things they're trying to get rid of are people who respond to the placebo effect, because the placebo effect throws the data right off the chart. A simple fact is this, and people might be upset, but the drugs like Prozac in laboratory tests are no better than a sugar pill. And that's how many billions of dollars a day on this planet are spent buying Prozac.
Yes.
Or statin drugs. Statin drugs help less than 3% of the people that take them. And in fact, they cause side effects that are dangerous in about 23%. So you help 3% with a drug, 23% are getting toxic from the drug. And the idea is these are drugs that, how long do you take statins? How long do you plan to live?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, that's they're drug
They're
dealers.
cash cows.
They're
They are
drug
drug
dealers.
dealers. They're good drug dealers. And I would call you out on placebo effect, but this has been well studied. 60 Minutes has done things about that. A third of the cases isn't far off for, it having a benefit on the sugar pill. So
Absolutely.
We know that's true. And when I talk to people I know in the States, my family members, my relatives, my dad, I'm like, what's going on? And he's always, I'm on this statin, I'm on this cholesterol drug, I'm on this, I'm on this. I'm like, really? Is there something that wrong with you? Like, everyone's medicated there.
It's pushed beyond any belief because it's advertised every 10 minutes on television. There's a new drug or a drug, and it's put into their heads like, your life's not working right. This drug, look at the happy people. See, they've taken the drug and how happy they are. And people buy that story, and drugs kill over 300,000 people a year. Pharmaceutical drugs kill about 300,000 people a year. And everybody's, that's just the cost of doing medicine. And yet they have a war on drugs, which kill less than 30,000 people a year. And all of a sudden you got a war because 30,000 people died. 300,000 people die. That's business as usual. It's like, wow.
And most people would blow their mind with those stats, but I think you're probably right. As in this whole huge war on drugs we have around the planet, all of the overdoses, all of the shocking stories and the things you see in movies, 30,000 deaths. Versus 300,000 due to pharmaceutical drug deaths. Prescribed
Yes.
by a doctor.
Yes.
That ad that you saw on television.
Yes.
And then you have it. Yeah, that says a lot. Now, how can they actually control the discussions in medical schools? It's one thing if they control the studies. How can they control what people are talking about, what people are teaching?
Where does funding come from? Where does money come from in a medical school? Who gets paid? Doctors get paid. They get paid to prescribe drugs. They have these young women, that you pick. Who are the drug reps? You look at them, you line them up, there's a few guys over there, but most of them are all these pretty young women. Why? They walk in a lab, give a smile, here's some samples, hand these out, and the next thing you know, then the doctor is prescribing their patients to those drugs. There's a story, there's even movies about that. Okay, that's a real story. The schools get money from pharmaceutical agencies, and research, I said, is big. Research is big. People don't understand. When I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine, I gave 6 lectures a year. And the government at that time and the people were like up in arms, just like, you pay these professors this much money, and some of them, like Lipton, only teach 6 classes in a year? And when the truth came out, why? When I get a grant, the school gets an extra 56% of whatever the grant was back then. So if I got a $100,000 grant, the school was given $56,000 to have me have the grant. They called it overhead. And when they put the numbers together, the researchers were bringing in nearly half of the money to run a university. So all of a sudden they turn around and go, don't kick the cash cow. If it's 6 lectures, he's still bringing money and paying more than his salary and supporting the school. So research is a very big commodity at a university because it offsets their expenses.
Okay, so it's a racket.
It is a racket.
And all these pristine, like these universities, you look up at these hollowed schools and these noble things, behind the scenes,
money.
It's a lot of dirty money.
Absolutely. Look, I was required to get a grant. That's what allowed me to be there. Well, I said, where do you get your money from? Well, you can get it from government, but government money is less and less every year. Private sources, Muscular Dystrophy Association, American Cancer Society, all these societies support, and pharmaceutical straight cash money, cash cow.
Okay. How do we break this cycle? How do you fight these huge companies?
Basically stop buying the product. And you say, but how can I stop buying the product? And the answer is, well, empower yourself because you're the one that controls all this. Any drug that affects you, you got to understand this. If I take a drug and it affects me, the reason why it affects me is because I have a natural equivalent of that drug in my own biology. You don't take a drug and it affects you and you have a receptor for that drug, like you were having this protein receptor for a drug you may never take. That would be silly. So if you have a receptor for a drug, then by definition, that receptor was already there because there's a natural drug. So in smoking pot, everyone, oh, no, there's a drug called tetrahydrocannabinol. And guess what? You have receptors for it because you make your own. So the idea is this. Well, if you want to have the effect of the drug, do you have to take an outside drug? And I say, no, you have to change your consciousness because you already manufacture every equivalent of a drug right now. And the idea is, if you're not manufacturing it, then that means your consciousness is not supporting you in your health. And it's really an adjustment of consciousness, not an adjustment of your biology.
So it's a mindset shift that we don't need the solution in a pill, that we're not victims, that it's not a fatalist, way of looking at life, that your future is predetermined.
Well, see, that's the old genetic story. Oh, right. You've got this cancer gene. There is no cancer gene. That's an absolute truth. I can say it right here. There is no gene that causes cancer, not one. And I say, well, yeah, but look, Angelina Jolie, she had a double mastectomy because she had the BRCA1 gene. And I go, yeah, 50% of the women with the BRCA1 gene never get the cancer. What's the point? If the gene causes cancer, how can 50% of the women that have the gene not get the cancer? And the answer is the gene alone is not causing the cancer. It's associated with it, but it doesn't cause. You have to have some life stimulus kick it off, and then we'll select that gene. Okay?
And what would that stimulus be?
Mostly in cancer, anger.
Is that proven, or is that just a theory?
No, there's a collective nature of who are the cancer patients. What's a characteristic of a cancer patient? Most of them are very upset in their lives. They're not happy. They're not, releasing their emotions, stresses, holding them in, bottling them in. And the chemistry of stress is a chemical. And the chemical, here's a simple fact. Stress causes at least up to 90% of doctor visits. You say, how can stress do this? And the answer is very simple. Stress causes a hormone called stress hormones, cortisol, to be released in the body. I say, what does cortisol do? I say, number one, it causes the blood in the viscera, the guts, where maintenance of the body and healing comes from all the organs. It causes the blood vessels to shut down because it pushes the blood to the arms and legs. Why? Stress means you're ready to run, fight or flight. So you push the energy to where you need it, arms and legs. Well, where do you get it from? Well, you squeeze the blood vessels in the gut. Well, this is growth. The viscera is growth. That's what the organs are for. Arms and legs are for protection. What's the point? If I'm in protection, I shut off growth. And more importantly, stress hormones shut off the immune system. A reason is just energy. The idea is if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and you have a bacterial infection, how do you want to split the energy? How much energy you want to run away and how much you want to fight the with the immune system? The answer is, the hell with the bacterium. I mean, if the tiger catches you, the bacteria is useless. It's meaningless, So when you're in stress hormones shut down the immune system to conserve energy. Does the immune system use energy? Of course. If you've ever been really sick, you never even got out of bed, you have no energy. And if you're in fight or flight mode, you need the energy to deal with the world, okay? So stress hormones physically shut off the immune system. When you're under stress, that's when sickness starts to show up. In fact, it's so good at shutting off the immune system, doctors give patients who are going to receive a foreign organ, a graft of a kidney or a lung or whatever they're grafting, that's foreign tissue. If you put a foreign organ in your body, your immune system's job is to eliminate it. So as they're transplanting an organ, they give the patient stress hormones at the same time because stress hormones will shut off the immune system so the organ won't be rejected right away. That's how effective it is. It's used therapeutically to shut off the immune system. Yeah, but everybody out there in this world right now, with a small exception, is under some level of stress. Stress of my job, stress of money, will I have health care, whatever it is. And I say, yeah, every one of those people is dripping stress hormones continuously in their body, and those hormones inhibit the immune system, and the result is illness. And if you stop the growth, you say, yeah, but I'm an adult, I don't need to grow. And I say, yeah, but you have to replace hundreds of billions of cells that you lose every day. As I said, we just lost now 2 billion red cells.
So Angelina shouldn't have got the double mastectomy.
No, she has to recognize this. There's, the gene didn't cause it, okay, but it's related to a lifestyle. And if you change the lifestyle, you don't have to worry about the gene. But the problem is 95% of our life is coming from the programs of life, how to live life that we get in the first 7 years of life. The movie The Matrix is not science fiction. It's a documentary. Every human, and it's a fact, Every human first 7 years is download a hypnosis. The brain of a child under 7 is in a lower vibrational frequency. When you put wires on a person's head, you read electroencephalograph, reading brain activity. A child below 7 has a lower vibration than consciousness. It's called theta. Theta is imagination. Oh, that's how kids play a tea party with mud pies, but to them it's a real thing. A kid rides a broom, it's a horse. That's theta, imagination. Theta is also hypnosis. And the idea is this: before you can become conscious, if you don't have any programs, what are you going to be conscious of? It's sort of like I buy a new iPod and I take it out of the box and I push play and nothing happens, and you think, oh my God, I spent all the money and the damn thing isn't working. And then some little 7-year-old kid comes up and says, well, mister, you didn't download any music. How are you going to play something? And I go, that's the same thing. It's like the brain is like the iPod. Consciousness is the screen where I can create. But if I don't have anything in the hard drive, I can't create. So nature makes the first 7 years. What kind of programs are required to live on this planet? I say, how do you get them? Theta is hypnosis. You just watch. You watch your parents, you watch your siblings, and your community, because you have to learn how many 100,000 rules. Think about it. Just to be a functional member of a family and a functional member of a community, there are rules. Teach an infant these rules. I say, oh, you don't have to. First 7 years, they observe it and just download it. And then I say, well, why is it relevant? Because this is the unfortunate fact. 95% of our life, this is a fact, comes from those programs in the subconscious. Every day, only about 5% of their life are you using conscious, which is creative. 5%.
So your life is being lived, even though you think you're living your life.
Exactly, and you don't see it because it's called subconscious, below conscious. And the Jesuits, for 400 years, they were boasting. People didn't understand. They say, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. They've been saying that for 400 years because they knew 7 years was the program period. And 95% of your life after that will be whatever that program is. So Angelina Jolie runs in a family where there is cancer. And I say, yeah, they have the gene. I say, that didn't cause it. It was the behavior that was passed on. Behavior is passed on, not like genes. It's passed on through families, right, but it's passed on through learning in families.
Okay. In your lecture on the biology of belief, you made this analogy at the end of a camera and then an eye, and how the camera kind of inverts the image and puts it on the film, and yet with our eye, we take it, invert the image, and then we put it through a filter in our brains.
Right.
And this is what you're talking about. The first 7 years of your life puts a filter on everything.
Absolutely. How do you behave?
Right. There's millions of rules, so you and I can look at two separate things, or two things, and completely have different conclusions.
Right, and it's just based on how you grew up, what you see. You know, look, this is not new. I mean, there's the famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Sure. And basically said you come from a poor family and you could struggle your whole life and try to get rich, but you're not going to make it. And if you come from a rich family, you could be stupid your whole life, Donald Trump, and make it. Not because it was thinking, but it was unconscious behavior that was downloaded from rich families into kids, which is unconscious. So they're making the right moves unconsciously. If they engage their conscious mind, then they look stupid, but it's unconscious. And that's the same thing with poor people. Poor people have beliefs from the family. Oh, you can't make it, life's a struggle, things are hard, who do you think you are? And if that's the program you get, then 95% of the day you will sabotage yourself. And that's why poor people stay poor and rich people stay rich, because the programming.
Yeah, I've had Robert Kiyosaki on the show. It's a great
book.
book.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to raise our children differently. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Conscious parenting.
What do we do?
Well, we have to recognize, number one, that 95% of our behavior is coming from subconscious. So a child is going to record for 7 years, and they're going to record you. You have a new baby. That baby is going to look at you because you are the parent. The first thing a baby learns in the first week or two of life, who's the parent? Very important, because that's the reference point. If anything goes in their life, they're going to look at the parent first thing. A child on a playground is on a swing, falls off the swing on the ground. First thing it does is look at the parent. If the mother's like, ah, the kid starts crying. But if the mother goes, get up and get back on the swing, the kid gets back up on the swing. It's reflection. So you have to recognize a child is going to observe every move of you. Then you also have to recognize, well, hell, if 95% of it is coming from my invisible programming, I'm going to pass on the family pattern unconsciously 95% of the day.
Family, country, society, pattern.
The whole pattern, the pattern of growing up, the programming.
Okay. Unless I make a conscious effort.
The conscious effort to change your programming, it's very hard to stay conscious. This is why we always go back into the subconscious, because when you're thinking, that's a conscious mind function. So, Brian, what are you doing on Tuesday? If I ask you that, the answer's not out here, it's inside. So the moment you're thinking, you let go of driving the vehicle because you went inside. I go, well, it doesn't mean whatever you're doing, you stop walking or driving the car or doing a job. Those are programs in the subconscious because you've repeated them over and over again. So the subconscious is autopilot. When the conscious is busy, autopilot drives the vehicle. Point is, when conscious is busy, it's not observing what's going on. So let's say we're having this conversation in a car, and I've been driving for 10 minutes, and we've had this great conversation, and all of a sudden I look out the window, I go, I haven't paid attention to the road while we have the conversation. But I go back and say, can I say what the conversation was about? Yeah, we talked about this and this and this. And I say, and what was on the road during that 10 minutes? You go, I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. See, that's when the subconscious, so I say, how was your driving? And I go, it was whatever way you learned how to drive. If you had a bad driving instructor, then you were driving 10 minutes with lousy driving.
Okay. So how can I change that then? I need to be more conscious of my subconscious?
You have to be conscious of well, you see, here's the problem. 7 years is programming. I say, well, what program did you get when you were 0 or 1? You go, I have no idea what the hell the program was. I say, 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious. Your life is a printout of your subconscious behavior. Oh, so you don't have to try and think about what happened. I just say, look at your life. The things you like that come into your life come in because you have a program that supports them. But anything you struggle with, work hard at, put a lot of effort into making it happen, why you're working so hard, inevitably you have a program that doesn't support that conclusion, and you're trying to override the program. So you don't need to do a lot of shrink and psychology stuff. You just look at your life and say, where am I struggling? Because wherever you're struggling, inevitably it's a program in your subconscious that does not support that destination you've been looking for.
Okay, so it's all, the evidence is all there. You take an honest look at your life and your history, whether it's anything in your life, relationships or business or this or that, and then that'll point to you where there's some kind of incongruence.
Right. I mean, go back to Angelina Jolie.
Right.
She could look at her life and she could say, I could look at the gene and say the gene caused the cancer. I say, no, look at your life, because that behavior was passed from your mother to you, and she got it from your grandmother, and et cetera. And it's a history. It's
your parents
connected.
Who were also actors, starved for attention, angry, you no longer talk to them, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, so now we recognize that, then we try to make a conscious change, which is very difficult.
Now that's where the problem comes from.
All right. Okay.
You want to know the problem?
Yeah.
I guess some of the people might want to hear that answer too. And the thing is this.
This is you evolving, right? This is things that you kind of went from A to B to
I
B
have two
to
different
C.
lives in this lifetime. Before I put this knowledge into effect, and after I put this knowledge into effect, and I use the word put into effect. Why? I had the knowledge academically. It's like, oh my God, look at the research. What does it mean? I understood it from the level. And with all that knowledge, it didn't change my life. People read self-help books. I go, well, you read the book. You got a lot of knowledge. I say, is your life changed? No, but you got a lot of knowledge. And so here's the difference. The conscious mind is creative and can learn in any number of ways. Read a self-help book, go to a lecture, listen to this program, and conscious mind's going to get some awareness. And I go, yeah, but subconscious mind doesn't learn that way. I go, right, it doesn't. Subconscious mind learns in two fundamental ways naturally. Hypnosis, which is the first 7 years. And after age 7, how do you put new programs in? Repetition. Practice. You want to drive a car, you didn't learn how by just getting in the seat and put the key in. You had to practice driving the car. You want to learn the alphabet. How many times did you go from A to Z? Try to go to A to Z before you can complete it. Once you completed it, you didn't have to go back and do it again. So 2 phases. You want to train the subconscious mind. Hypnosis, repetition. I like the last one because there's a new phrase that's bandied about called fake it till you make it. Meaning, if you're not a happy person, I say, you want to be a happy person? Then repeat all the time, I'm happy, I'm happy. I say, well, you don't look happy or anything. You say, no, who am I talking to? By repetition, I'm talking to subconscious.
Okay.
If subconscious gets, I am happy, and 95% of your life comes from that subconscious, there will be a point once the subconscious got, I am happy, you don't have to say it again.
Okay.
It'll be automatic.
And that's why we see people do affirmations and gratitude journals and stuff, because if you do that daily,
It's repetitive. That's the secret part. Look, putting a sticky note on the refrigerator is more like a suggestion, but it's not a repetition. So it doesn't work very well. But you have to do, repetition is a habit. It's making habit. So you got to do something religiously in a sense of repeating it to make it work.
okay, have you done this in your life?
Oh, absolutely.
What were some of those big changes you made? And when did you have this crossover where you stopped being a doctor who knew the facts and started being like a practicing human being, changing his future?
Because when the simple reality says, the fact said I'm creating this life, and I looked at my life at that time and I said, I'm creating this. This is not what I want. And I was thinking, well, how do I create this? And
Why didn't you want it? You're a Stanford University professor.
I wasn't personally happy. I was professionally successful, but through the lineage of my family, personal relationships were not high on the quality list at all. So I was programmed with behaviors that would sabotage personal relationships. And I had to change that. And I had to change it by consciously repeating and doing a behavior that would say, what do you want? Are you happy? Are you happy? And I had to keep finding out. And it was interesting because I remember I was living in the Caribbean, beautiful place, and I had a great job. I had good money. I lived in a villa on the coast, and I loved all this, but I didn't have a person in my life. And I was so like, I need a person. I need a person. So I would try to chat up any woman that that looked interesting. Hey, listen, you want to go live in my villa? On the Caribbean? It's like that's a great. The pickup line was the best one ever, and I was so unsuccessful at it. And then one day I met this woman who came in on a yacht, and she was looking for what she might do, and I was saying, hey, I got this beautiful villa. Why don't you just come and you can stay as long as you want here? And she looked at me and she said, you're too needy. I can't be with you. Well, it was like a slap in the face, but it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call. And he said, yes, I'm needy. I'm needing this woman. I go, look at your life. You got all this money. You've got this beautiful place. You got this great job, and you can't be happy with that? It was the need part. I had to go back and say to myself, wait a minute. Why don't you start being happy around here? You got everything. Just learn to be happy. And I kept repeating, yeah, this is great. I love this. I love this. I love this. And at some point, I didn't have to even say it. I was just enjoying my life. And the best part about it was the moment I was really happy alone was when potential partners showed up like crazy. It was like, wow, because I was in a happy, satisfied place. I didn't need a partner. So having a partner was for our benefit, but not for a need. And that's, unfortunately, most people's relationships today are codependent because most of us get lousy programming. And so, if we're like spinning tops, we wobble because of our bad programming. And if you find two wobbles that come together, they can balance out. Okay, that's called codependency. Right. But if you learn how to spin in perfect balance, then you don't need anybody. So having somebody, that's fun, enjoyable for the great experience of life. But not having somebody because I needed somebody, because that puts a lot of demands on both people in a relationship.
Okay. Let's talk about those first 7 years and the matrix, because my boy is 3 days old and I've got 6 years and 360 some days left.
The program's already started.
Yeah, I know. And I know it. I see it because, so this happened the other day. I have another son who's 1 year and about 4 months. And the other day he picked up a mobile phone and started walking around and talking into it. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to talk. And yet he's seen us doing it, and so he does it.
Absolutely.
So I know he's mimicking all of this behavior.
Absolutely.
That's the stuff I can see. What other behavior of mine, my dysfunctional items, is he already absorbed? So as a parent, what can I do differently to try to raise him in the best way, the most conscious way, the most intelligent way, where he, he'll be able to, be more conscious?
Yeah, well, basically you have to identify where are your programs that are limiting you. And that's just the hard part because it comes out from subconscious. So when you are playing a negative program, I give 20 years I've been giving lectures on this, okay? And 20 years I've been saying the same story because it works. And it works like this. I say, you probably sometime in your growing up period, you had a friend and you were very close to your friend. You knew your friend's behavior very well. And you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day you see your friend has the exact same behavior as their parent. So, this excites you. You gotta tell your friend, you go, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then you back away from Bill. Bill go ballistic and say, how can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. And people laugh because they're familiar with it. And I go, that's the most profound story in the world. Everyone else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. The reason is he's playing it from his subconscious when he's thinking, and he's the one that doesn't even see the behavior. So I go, every one of us is Bill. There's nobody that's not Bill. So what we need is a reflection to say, when are you playing that negative behavior? Because when you're playing it, you don't see it. So in a good relationship, communication between the partners is very critical. And the communication, because if you don't have a good communication and I say, hey, Brian, that's the stupidest behavior I've ever seen. All of a sudden, right away, we're in a fight. You're going to defend yourself. Cortisol. Anger, arguments, separation, I'm not talking to you, and all this stuff like that, because it's taken as a personal attack. But if we know that we have negative programs, and every one of us does, so that's an important part. If we know that, and we have a partner who's close, and they bring it up in a nice conversational way, I can do something about it. But if they bring it up in like, what kind of behavior is that, Brian? Then the first thing you're going to do is like, I don't want to talk about it, or we're in a fight. So how do you know your unconscious behavior? And the answer is other people see it. You won't see it. So if you're in a relationship, it's having a dialogue with your partner when you play one of those programs and you're unaware of it and your partner's watching this in front of you. And they say, well, did you really mean to say this? Did you really mean to do this way? And if you stop and think, you go, no.
Okay, so I need to be open-minded to people around me, to take their feedback,
right.
Not get emotional about it,
right.
Process it, and then look at myself and say, okay, if 3 out of 4 people are saying it, I maybe need to work on my own program.
Right, and that's when you have to do the programming. I say this is the problem because the conscious mind being creative learns in any number of ways. The subconscious mind being habitual, not creative, habit, only learns in 2 fundamental ways. I said the hypnosis, which every night when you go to bed, just when you're just falling off into sleep, consciousness is disconnecting. The next period of your brain operation while your consciousness is disconnected is theta, which is the same brain function as in the first 7 years. So if you put a pair of earphones on at night with a program of what you would like to be true in your life, as soon as your conscious mind disconnects, that program is playing. It's not playing into your conscious mind. That's shut off. It's now going straight into the subconscious mind. So it's called auto-hypnosis. You don't need to go see a hypnotherapist. You just have to pick out what program would you like to have that you don't have. And they sell these programs at all kinds of places.
Okay, so to raise my son, I have to become better and be conscious of my own bad programming.
100%.
But in the meantime, he's growing up.
Yes.
So is there anything else I can do?
No, it's just always give very positive things. Parents act as coaches. It's like, hey, come on, you can do better than that. You don't deserve this. Who do you think you are? And they're like a coach. If you're talking to an older team player, they're working from conscious mind. So when the coach says, you don't deserve this, like being in the team, the player goes, oh, I'm not performing up to, my ability and I should work harder. And that's where the coach, gives them a little needle, right? Mm-hmm. But a child isn't functioning in consciousness until after 7. Before 7 is direct record. Whatever you just said, I just recorded it. So if the parent gets mad at the child and says, you don't deserve that, like throwing a tantrum for a toy in a store and you want to leave and you say, you don't deserve this, go. The child is not consciously understanding what you mean. The child's just recorded, I do not deserve. Now, if I hear that several times, especially in an emotional situation, because that downloads it faster, now I'm 40, 50 years old. What is my behavior 95% of the time? And the answer is, well, it comes from the program. I do not deserve. Well, that means unconsciously I will sabotage myself to make sure that the program is correct. I'm making the program true by adjusting the behavior to meet the program. So like in school, you could take an exam and then you get it back and you say, oh, look at that. I got these marked wrong. I knew the answers to these. Why did I get them wrong? I knew the answer. And the question was, were you programmed to be an average student? If you're an average student, then you got to miss a certain percentage.
Okay. So I really have to build up these children and keep in mind this
keep
positive
always
feedback.
quality statements. You're
Okay.
powerful. You are creative.
But in America, they say we've gone too far. Everyone gets the prize for the contest. Everyone gets the you did an amazing job. We love you so much. You're the best. They say we've gone too far with that. No?
I don't think so. I mean, basically recognizing that you're encouraging that child to do better by the child's own belief system. I can do better. That's my program. I'm better than this. I can do this. Okay. Now, but competition, that's a Darwinian word that we got really screwed up because competition means winner loser. And I say, well, no, that's not the original word, competition. Competition, original definition is strive together, work together to be better. Best example, I don't play tennis, but if you played tennis and you had a choice to play two different people, one who was obviously a weak player and one who's a good player, which one would you play with? Well, if you feel bad, pick the weak player because you'll beat the hell out of him. But if you want to get a better game, you pick the strong player because that player will make you work harder. So that's competition in a very positive sense. I pick the guy that's going to beat me because that made me better player. See, that's what competition means. I can become better in competition, not winner loser. That's the way we've seen it.
Okay, so we're looking at it the wrong way. Talk to me about meditation and psychedelics, because these are ways of maybe communicating with that hypnosis part of the brain. Because my experience here on London Real with plant medicine ayahuasca, it actually is like someone else giving you feedback about yourself, and it's usually not what you want to hear. It's usually very critical and a lot of times very true. Is this a way of simulating that other person?
Yes, and let's first understand about psychedelics. If you take a drug, any of the psychedelics, and it affects you, that means you have a receptor built into the system already because you didn't make the receptor waiting to see if you ever take the drug. You have a receptor because you can make that drug, okay? So first of all, it's just a natural experience, but you're enhancing it because you're not normally working on that level.
Okay.
I put those receptors, I activate them with the drug, and now I'm there.
And you say this to people so they know, because a lot of people have adverse reactions to the word drug.
Yes.
It's foreign, it's illegal, it's bad for me. And you preface this by saying, look, the only reason it works is because the receptor's there, which means it's there for a reason. We produce maybe lower quantities of this naturally. And
but you could, but that's a control thing.
Okay.
You can enhance it. Okay. So it's very important to recognize this is a manipulation of your nervous system. You could do this on your own, but then some people like master meditators or yogis. I can't remember which yogi it was who it was probably with Ram Dass, and they gave the yogi acid, and the yogi took the acid, and it's like, so why? Well, he's normally working on that level, so it wasn't a big change in his life. It was just he was already creating from a disconnect of conscious and subconscious, so his conscious mind was more in power.
Right.
Okay. So
and a lot of people in their lifetime have had that one moment that probably equates to that psychedelic experience where they had a vision, they had a thought, they had a life-changing experience. And this is probably when they have created that.
Absolutely. And that's a third way of changing your subconscious, but you can't control it. Okay. It's just like all of a sudden you get a diagnosis of terminal cancer. It's like, boom. Huh. And this gives you a moment of like, oh my God, there's two resolutions to that. I got terminal cancer. And it makes a big difference on the outcome. One resolution is, oh, my cells were stupid. The genes screwed up. I got cancer. The doctor's going to take the cells out. Then I won't have cancer. The other response is, geez, my life isn't really working that great. You know, there's so much trouble and stress and hardship. The idea about it is, out of those two, the one who thought the cells were stupid will get the cancer again. The one who said, wait, my life needs changing, has the most likely opportunity to never get the cancer again because they'll see that my behavior has contributed to this cancer. That's what the result is. I mean, that's where the cancer comes from, not having a gene, the behavior.
And what do the cancer people say when you tell them that? I'm sure they don't like to hear it.
Well, it's real interesting because it depends. If you're talking about the professional people, they don't want to hear it because their money is being made because you have cancer. If nobody had cancer, what the hell is their job? You know, there was a bill in the United States Senate to give discounts on health insurance to people who exercise and have good diets, who caused the bill to collapse was the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Society, the American Diabetes Society. These are major organizations. They pushed that bill to collapse it. Why? Well, if people get healthy, then what the hell is their job at some point? And it wasn't put down by, strange people. It was put down by these groups that represent us in the health industry. And I use the word industry, capitalize and underline. It's an industry. It makes money. And if it doesn't make money, they're not supporting it. That's the bottom line right
Even
there.
cancer charities are part of the industry.
That's the one who canceled this bill that would have given a discount under the guise saying, well, not all people have access to good food or exercise, therefore it would not be fair to offer that. And it was like, it wouldn't be fair to offer because those people would get healthy without medical support.
But these things, I used to think, what could be more noble than a cancer charity? People's most reactions are, oh, let me give you the money. Oh, you're doing such a wonderful thing. But when you look deeper, it's not true, right?
No, I'm over 70, and here's the point. How many times have I seen the Cancer Society come up? We're close to a cure. We just need some more money, push it over the line, and we can get this cure. I've heard that half a dozen times. And what does it mean? Everybody all of a sudden ponies up, here's some more money, they make all this money, then they disappear for a few years, and they come back, we need more money, we're close to a cure. It's like they haven't done a damn thing. Very little has been accomplished by this except spending a lot of money and bringing attention to the public about their disease that they're making money from.
Okay, back to the psychedelics. Finish off your thoughts on that. So the receptors are there. Now talk about these.
Well, the receptors control the behavior of the cell. So psychedelics alter the behavior from our conventional way and expand our consciousness and amplify things, which is good and bad, depending. If you're in a bad place, don't take a drug because you're going to amplify that. So, being in a good place.
Maybe that's a good thing for you.
Well,
it might change your behavior.
It's called a bad trip, and if you learn from it, that's really cool. But most people, it's just a bad trip, and they actually go the other way from a bad trip. I'll never do that again.
I had a guest on one time who was an expert in psilocybin mushrooms, and he said, Brian, there are no bad trips. You are just learning at a rate that you are not accustomed to.
Yeah, and facing things that you may not want to see. And that's the bigger issue. That's like when you're in a relationship and your partner gives you a feedback, the first tendency is to resist and protect yourself. You called me a what? Yeah. Hands up, stop, that's it. I'm not listening, I'm shutting off, I'm in protection. But the reality is, maybe you needed to hear this.
Like the woman on the yacht, that was probably could be qualified as a bad trip. You were learning at a rate you weren't accustomed to. Ouch, that really hurt, you saying that I'm needy.
Absolutely.
And yet you got all this growth on the back.
Oh, 100%. That was the most, I can remember walking away from that and going back to my place and looking at it going, how can you not be happy? Look where the hell you are. And it was learning happiness. I had to learn it.
Okay. And finishing up on the psychedelics. So you were saying good, bad trips, magnifying your reality. What are your other thoughts on that?
Well, I think they're quite useful for people who need to learn, and there are other people who don't need them. A yogi, as I said, can do it through all the meditation and all the other practices of conscious control. It takes time, it's effort, and you can do it. No, that's not a joke, that's real. Or take that acid hit, take that psilocybin mushroom, and boom, you're being pushed into learning right now, okay? And it's really, really wonderful if you understand. If you don't understand, it's like, and you should be a little older, because as you're older, the meaning of what's happening has more influence on you. When you're younger, it's just, wow, that was really trippy. It's like you didn't learn anything in that one. So it really is a useful element to affect your life if you use it in that useful element way, okay? Because it could be a party drug.
Right. So you can kind of hack into your conscious mind.
Yeah.
A lot like listening to things when you're asleep. It's a way of getting into that subconscious mind through another means.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talk to me about your book, The Honeymoon Effect.
Yeah.
What that was all about, if you can explain it.
Okay. The honeymoon effect is this. This is the whole story of the Matrix. Matrix, you've been programmed. Oh, we're going to take a red pill and get out of the program. Okay. Falling in love is the equivalent of taking the red pill biologically, because scientists have studied what is called mind wandering. I said, what is mind wandering? I said, well, your conscious mind could be focused on a task, or your conscious mind could go off into think about things, okay? And the relevance about that is when the conscious mind is staying in the front, you're in absolute control. Wishes, desires, what you want, conscious mind, creative, you're in control. But the moment your conscious mind takes off into a thought or starts thinking or whatever going on, it lets go of the wheel, the autopilot takes over, okay? So the idea is this: if your mind is wandering, then you're being run by the subconscious. And it turns out this is very negative. When your mind is straightforward in consciousness, you're controlling the vehicle. So I say, falling in love has been demonstrated biologically to be equivalent to the red pill, because what it does is it keeps you, what do they call, mindful, keeps you conscious. Look, you've been looking for this partner your whole life. They're now in front of your face. This is not the time to go thinking about things. It's time to be, oh, look what I got right here in front of me. And I say, well, think about it this way. Your life could suck every day, every day, every day, every day. And then you meet this person, and 24 hours later, it's heaven on earth. 24 hours later, oh my God, I'm so in love, you know. Even the job's not so bad anymore, and the food tastes great, and the music is so much better, and love and love and love. I go, what the heck happened? You had all of this negative, and then in 24 hours, you have this heaven on earth. And the answer was, it was taking the red pill. That's what falling in love is. At that moment, you stop playing the program. Now you're operating from conscious mind, which is creative, which by definition is wishes and desires. Brian, what the heck do you want from your life? If you answer that question, it's a creative answer, and by definition, it's conscious. So your wishes and desires are in your conscious mind. In a normal person's life, 5% of the day, you're moving toward that. 95% you're playing the program. You fall in love, 100, it was actually 90%, I think is the number, 90% from conscious mind. 90% of the day you are now operating from creative wishes and desires. I go, look, I said your life sucked all the way up, and then 24 hours of operating on wishes and desires and not playing the program turned earth into heaven for you at that moment. And then you go, well, how come the honeymoon doesn't last? And I go, because inevitably you still have to think about things, your job, your chores, your requirements, what you have to do. And at some point, once you start thinking, then the conscious mind is shut off. And guess what shows up? All those behaviors in the subconscious mind that were negative, 70%. And your partner, remember, your partner and you fall in love same time, both of you operating from conscious mind with wishes and desires. And all of a sudden, you start thinking, and then this behavior shows up that was your mother, your father, or whatever thing you learned. And your partner is like, where the hell did that come from? Who are you? Is a response. It's like, where did that come from? We've been in this honeymoon. I've never seen that behavior. If you would have played that behavior on the first date, maybe we wouldn't have a second date. But now it shows up. And I say, why did it show up? Because I stopped being mindful.
Okay. So how do you teach people to keep the honeymoon alive?
Is to change the subconscious program. and it's simple for reasoning is simple. Conscious mind, wishes and desires. Subconscious mind, program. Well, what if you took the wishes and desires and made those programs? Then guess what? You don't even have to think about it. You will automatically, 95% of the day, be playing behaviors to manifest those wishes and desires. Okay. So reprogramming the subconscious with wishes and desires means you don't even have to think about it. You will be successful because 95% of the day, your program automatically will be seeking your wishes and desires.
And the evidence that this works is look at anybody who just fell in love. Their whole paradigm shifts.
And their health changes. People say, oh, look how they glow. They must be in health. And the answer is, why? Let's go back to the Petri dish for a second to make sense out of what the heck was going on in the Petri dish. I said the culture medium was the equivalent of blood. And I said, when you look in the mirror and you see yourself as one single individual, that is an illusion. You're made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. Brian, Bruce, that's the name for a community of 50 trillion cells. That's not a single entity at all, okay? So I say...
Some of that's my gut biome that has nothing to do with my genetics. They're just people that are hanging out there.
Alter your genetics. The microorganisms in your gut will alter your genetics. And so that's really important to not be doing a lot of antibiotics because you cannot live without that microbiome. Okay. So then we're back to this understanding of what? The human body is not a single thing. It's 50 trillion cells. So I go, we are skin-covered Petri dishes. Inside, 50 trillion cells. And culture medium, blood, the original culture medium. And I say, yeah, but the chemical composition of the culture medium altered the fate of the cells. I go, yeah. And I say, then who's controlling the composition of my blood? Because that's culture medium for 50 trillion cells. I go, the brain is the chemist. And you go, yeah, but what chemical should the brain put into the blood? It's making the culture medium. I go, oh, it's based on the picture in the mind. I go, if you hold a picture of love, I can tell you what chemicals you'll release. Dopamine, pleasure. Yeah, being in love is pleasure. I can feel it. Why? Chemicals coming out of the brain. Oxytocin, bonding. The one that gives me that pleasure I want to bond with. So oxytocin comes in and now I'm directed to bond with that person. Vasopressin is another chemical released in love. Makes you more attractive so you keep your partner around. And growth hormone, which is what it says, growth. So when you fall in love, the cocktail of chemicals coming out of your brain are things that enhance your vitality, your life, make you healthier, happier, and joy. I go, the same person, if they open their eyes and see something that scares them, none of those love chemicals are going to come out of the brain. At that moment, stress hormones and inflammatory agents are going to be released by the brain. All of a sudden, I say, well, then you change the chemical composition of the culture medium. I go, yeah. Result? The composition of the culture medium controlled the fate of the cells. The composition of your blood controls the fate of your cells. The composition of your blood based on the picture in your mind. Change the picture, you change the chemistry.
Talking about this concept of individual human beings when we're actually, 7 billion cells in this world, and talk to me how this kind of equates to humanity as a whole and the way you see that.
Yeah, well, in a new understanding, if we stop looking at genes as the source of evolution, that's a Darwinian view. And we have to stop looking at genes for a simple reason. They said if you look at the tree of life from primitive organisms, you go up the tree and you get to the humans that's supposedly at the top. What is the metric, or what is the thing that you are measuring from the lowest one to the top one? Well, at first it was genes. We were supposed to, before the Human Genome Project came about, we were supposed to have about 150,000 genes to make a human. One of the primitive organisms that they use in research, like the fruit fly, is a worm called Caenorhabditis elegans. The worm is about 0.5 millimeter. You can hardly see it. And I say, well, how many genes does that have? 20,000 genes. So I say, oh, cool, that's near the bottom of the tree, 150,000 human. Well, they've done the Human Genome Project. What's the answer? 20,000 genes. Hell, we don't have any more genes than the worm has. What was the point? Genes are not a metric of evolution. What is the metric? Consciousness. What's consciousness? It's the membrane of the cell, the skin of the cell. That's where the nervous system comes from, okay? If you start measuring consciousness as the metric for evolution, you'll see that where we are in this world today is an organism, a new organism evolves, and the next phase is to make the smartest version of that organism. But it maximizes. There's a physical thing about consciousness. It's physical. And so an organism can only have so much consciousness. And I say, then evolution stops. Why? I can't make it any smarter? I go, but it changes paradigm, changes another way. Once you've got the smartest organism, the way you get more intelligence is bring them together with others, make community. So an amoeba formed early on, and they were just single amoebas. And I said, what did they learn how to do? Come together in community. I go, yeah, 50 trillion of them have come together to make this. And the shared awareness is 50 trillion times the awareness of one cell, okay? Humans have maximized their ability of consciousness because the brain it's inside a skull. I can't make the brain any bigger than a skull. So if I maximize the consciousness of a human, I say, well, then that's the smartest human you can make. I go, yeah. And I say, then what? Bring the humans together in a community, and then evolution jumps. So technology was not able to be produced until enough humans lived together to share awareness. About 30,000 years ago, technology started. Now the number of humans sharing awareness is so great, technology changes almost day by day in today's world. Why? More awareness, everyone sharing. So our evolution, we made the smartest human, that's done. The next level of evolution is to put the humans together, like 50 trillion cells come together to make this, 7 billion humans come together to create a super organism called humanity. That's our evolutionary paradigm. That's where we're going. And that's why if you look at the world today, you see it all falling apart. Borders are coming apart, strife and religion, economics, everywhere you look. I go, why? It doesn't work. And how's it going to work? Well, the internet was the evolution of the planet's nervous system for humans. I can get 7 billion people on the internet right now. I mean, I can connect all of them. I go, yeah. Therefore, we can act as one organism, connected, and create harmony in the world. That's our destination.
But we're not doing that very well.
No, we have to first break down the old structure. See, so when I look at the world coming apart right now, which it is coming apart, and there's two parts of me. One of them is going, holy crap, look what's going on. And the other part is me, this has to happen. Why? The world that we're living on is not sustainable. We can't keep this up. We're destroying the planet. We, humans, are creating what is called the sixth mass extinction of life. 5 times on this planet, life was thriving. And some event happened, and then it ended it. 70 to 90% of all life disappeared. The last one was the dinosaurs, when an asteroid apparently hit the Earth and upheaval in the environment, and the organisms couldn't survive, and they died out. This is the sixth mass extinction. And what scientists recognize, it's human behavior that is destroying the web of life. It says, if you don't change this, evolution is going to eliminate us. You say, oh, in 1,000 or 2,000 years? I go, no, probably within a century. Look, here it is. If you were alive in 1970, they did a survey of how many animals were on this planet. They recently redid the survey. 2/3 of that population have disappeared since 1970. We only have 1/3 of the animals on this planet that were here in 1970. And fish, it's already recognized by 2048, there will be no fish in the ocean.
2048.
2048, no
That's
fish.
soon.
Yes.
30 years.
Yes.
And
And the
yet
idea
you
is
said-
we're next.
And we're next. And yet you said part of you is terrified and part of you is excited.
The exciting part is I know that the situation, that the way we're living on our planet today, it's not sustainable. I mean, the numbers they come up with, we need 1.5 planet Earths to provide for the population today. We don't have 1.5. We only got one, and we're destroying that one as it is. It's inevitable. You can't survive. We are not surviving because of the way we're living. So what are you going to do? Erase. Bring it down. Build something new. You can't build on the foundation that we have, because the foundation of our belief system is what's causing the problem. So it has to fall down. Well, it doesn't make it any easier for me to know it has to fall down and yet watch it, But it's like, I don't watch it and go, oh, it's falling.
So this is like a bad trip. And we're learning at a rate we're not accustomed to, but we're learning.
Right. And if we learn, we survive. And if we don't learn, extinction is already inevitable. So this is a choice for us. You cannot continue the way we have been living because we are not sustainable.
Let me ask you about your president, Mr. Trump. And a lot of people complain about Mr. Trump, but is he not a manifestation of our own programming, because he was elected by those people?
Right. And he was
By us.
He was elected because people didn't want the status quo. The status quo didn't work. Hillary Clinton was clearly status quo. People just go, it doesn't work now. Take a shot, okay? But the fact is, as much as I personally dislike every character of that person, he's also doing the best job that he didn't know that he's doing, and that's the great destroyer. He's destroying the structure. He's causing a conflict in the United States. It's like the Civil War going on, okay? And the relevance about that is, yeah, if we have to bring it down, then he's the man for the job. He can destroy anything, and he's destroying this. And I look at it 2 ways. One, I hate to watch what's going on, but I also know that if we don't build a better system, then the limitation of our existence on this planet is facing us right now.
What things do you like him destroying?
Here, I want to straighten something out, because the government always gets blamed. The government's bad. It's like, the government's not bad. The paperwork called government paper, beautiful. It's the people we elect that suck. They're the corrupt ones. That's where the money goes. That's where corporations have replaced people, because according to a rule, which was never actually valid, they say corporations are equal to people in the law. It's like, well, they might be, equal to people, but they have no morality. And we can't call them on it. You can't say that's a bad thing you're doing. If they're making money, they don't care if it's bad or good. And so the reality is, we have given an entity that has no morality the most power in the government. And Their ends are for personal greed. And that 1% that is grabbing and gobbling up all the money, leaving 99% of the people to struggle, is completely the opposite of our evolution. And these have to come down. So we want to get corporations back out of the system and put people back in charge of the system.
And Trump is doing that.
Well, he's just messing up the system so much it doesn't work, and causing so much conflict that it's sort of like, bring it down so we can build it back up again.
And you're okay if there's some friendly fire in there. We got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Listen, I was there when the Vietnam War was going, and we couldn't get out of that damn thing no matter how much we tried. The parents were supporting the government, America, love it or leave it. The kids were saying, I don't want to go die in Vietnam. And this was struggle. And then Kent State, and they shot some students.
Protesting.
24 hours later, man, that war was on its way out. Because the parents finally then got, what do you mean you're killing our own kids in this country? And the war ended. Now, Charlottesville, which we just been through, could have been one of those, but we've had a number of those things, like the school shootings, Columbine, Sandy Hook. Everybody gets excited right after, and then within a week or two, it's new news. What's new? That one's out. We need the equivalent of a Kent State to wake people up and say, that's enough. I've had enough. Charlottesville started out to be this way. I don't know if it will continue or not, but that was what we need. We need something to say, break it, stop here. And we haven't fully reached that point yet.
Okay. So you're hoping that Trump will throw a monkey wrench in everything and lay to waste many different institutions,
Absolutely.
many different corporates.
He threw out the Environmental Protection Agency. My God, I thought that's the one thing that was helping us. But then let's look at it at another level. They're also paid off by corporations. So there have been polluting corporations that the EPA's been not looking at them. Why? They all got paid off. The the Food and Drug Administration is supposed to be a watchdog. Yeah, but the people that are on that committee are also paid by the pharmaceutical industry. So they're, in collusion with the pharmaceutical industry. So they're not representing me anymore. And EPA had great ideas, but it doesn't fully represent me because it's still the money and who's getting paid. So, okay, bring it all down, because if we put the EPA back together again, maybe next time, we'll keep the money out of this program, and then we'll build a better one. So, yeah, I'm horrified the EPA is getting slammed, and on the other side is that, well, okay, a rebuilding of that will make a better version.
Okay. Talk to me about Bruce and his life. What are some of your daily practices? How do you start your day? What are things that you do in your life now to make you so handsome and happy? To make you conscious? What have you learned over the years that you put into practice?
I think that love of everything is the big thing. Wake up and be in love. Be in love with life. The idea of living on this planet. I have a chance, like not a lot of people don't have it. I travel around the world. I've seen so many different countries. I've seen this planet in so many beautiful ways. And I've come to another understanding in my life, which is my understanding from a biological point of view. And that is, I perceive this planet as heaven. That we were born into heaven. We don't die and go to heaven. We come into heaven. In other words, I recognize something I never knew as a biologist until I started to understand the nature of how the brain, the membrane of the cell worked. I didn't believe in spirituality. I was, genes, proteins, cells, that's all machines and stuff like that. I since have seen the mechanism where our identity is not even in here. Our identity is a broadcast. I have receptors. You have receptors for an identity. No two people have the same set. They're called self-receptors of all. That's a hell of a name. Self-receptors, receivers of self. Well, it is. It's a broadcast. My identity is picked up on the surface of my cells. I have these antennas, like a combination lock. You have a set on your cells, but we don't have the same set. We may have some overlap, but not the same set. No two people have the same set, meaning I can't take cells or organs out of my body and put it in anybody else because they have a different self, and the immune system will eliminate it. I said, well, where's the self? The immune system recognizes it. It's these receptors. I said, what if you take these receptors off? I said, well, then it's a generic human cell. It's going to anybody. But when the self receptors are on, it's a unique human cell. It's an individual. I said, yeah, but the receptors, we were counting those as what makes us different. I go, they're antennas. They receive a signal from the environment. So my identity is something being picked up from the environment played through my cells. If I die, which is the thing that really hit me, I said, well, the cells and the receptors are gone. Yeah, but the broadcast is still here. The broadcast. So if another embryo shows up in the future with the same combination, then I'd be back on the air again, but in a different body.
Okay. And that's a new observation for you.
For me, it blew my mind because I didn't believe in spirituality.
Right. So
So
your soul will live on. You will live on.
yeah, and that what we do is an exchange. And as a scientist, when at that moment that I said, "Oh my God, I'm an identity I'm a broadcast," and I said to myself, "Why have a spirit and a body then? Why not just be the spirit?" And my cells, being quite humorous, I think, responded by saying, "Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like?" And then it hit me. I said, "Oh my God, all of our senses are mechanisms. Eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch. They convert our world into sensation. But the nervous system doesn't see pictures or smell things. It just gets the vibrations. And remember I said you could put wires on your head and read your brain activity? Well, there's a new device, not electroencephalograph, magnetoencephalograph. The difference is the probe is out here, and I could read your brain activity out here, which all of a sudden says, oh my God, we are converting our experiences into nervous system vibration. The communication is all vibration, electromagnetic vibration. And we broadcast that. And I said, well, where's it going? I said, well, going back to source. A spirit cannot taste chocolate. It doesn't have taste buds. It can't see a sunset. It doesn't have eyes. But if I get into this virtual reality suit and have all these experiences, my nervous system translates them into a vibration, and they go back to source.
So it's essential being in this body.
Yeah, but that's the pleasure and the creative aspect. That's why I look at it as heaven. In a body, I am creative. I can build, I can move, I can do things, I can sense things. And that's, I realized, oh my God, we came here to taste the chocolate. We came here to see those sunsets and that. And all of a sudden I realized, boy, my programming in the first 7 years as a male offset that. Because what did we learn as males generally? Not to be sensitive.
Right.
And I go, well, that's right away the difference between women and men. Women are allowed to be sensitive. We have shut it off. Why? Well, if you're going to be a soldier, you can't be sensitive. So we have been programmed to be insensitive. Of course, that makes a crap relationship with women who are sensitive because they look at, oh, you're an insensitive lout, and it's like, that was my programming. I thought, wow, what a waste of a life to cut off those sensory experiences. And so one of the things I learned after, the cells taught me was go out and taste it and touch it and smell it and feel it. And if it's good, do it again. If you don't like it, don't do it again. This is an opportunity to experience the planet. But most of us shut off our experiences of programming.
So you've deprogrammed that, and now you're out there feeling and
enjoying it and having options. If I don't like it, then damn it, I'm not doing it again either. So I have choices.
What is your mission for the next 5-10 years? I mean, look, you spend, like you told me earlier, 4 or 5 months a year in New Zealand. You got houses always overlooking the water. You're in demand to speak around the world. What still gets you excited that you still need to go do?
I love to provide knowledge. Knowledge is power. We have been deprived of knowledge. We are operating as powerless individuals in a world. When we are so powerful, it's unimaginable. I mean, you can walk across hot coals if you want to. I even have videos of people in the South in the U.S. work themselves up into religious ecstasy, speak tongues and all that, and they do something called testify, which to me is like craziness. But they do things that no normal human would do, and they do it because they say God protects them. One of them is they drink strychnine poison in toxic doses. As long as they hold that belief, no harmful effects. You can drink strychnine poison if you have the right belief system. You can walk across those hot coals, but don't, in the middle of the walk, question whether you can do it or not. Because the moment you question is the moment you will get burned. And so I say, look, we're really very powerful. And yet we have been programmed to be not powerful. And that's how other people control us. And I love my life because I go out and say, no, you are so powerful. You just didn't have the knowledge. Knowledge is power. A lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And we've been deprived of knowledge of who we really are. So when I go out there and I see people recover their lives from devastating diseases or whatever is going on, once they've taken the power of their mind and put it back.
I had a guest in here a few weeks ago named Douglas Rushkoff, and he was saying that every app on your phone is someone else's business model. And he said things like Facebook aren't actually meant to give us more friends. They're actually meant to keep us in this constant state of kind of stress. This happens, push notification, this news event around the world, and it constantly keep us in this weird state of fear, and yet get our attention because that's what kind of makes the money.
Yeah.
Do you see like technology kind of taking us the wrong way sometimes as introducing these fears into our life?
Technology is good. How you use technology determines whether it's good or bad. Subconscious mind, for example, that's the evil part of your biology. And I go, no, subconscious mind is a record playback device. That's all it is. So don't blame the subconscious mind. The programming might be bad, but the mind itself is an amazing device. I mean, look, when did you learn how to walk? Before you were 2. Did you have to learn again? No. All those years you've been walking from a program you learned back then. And I go, yeah, great subconscious mind. Technology, if it's used right, it's great. And if it's used wrong, it could kill you. And so we really have to be more discerning. That's dependent on us. We have to have more responsibility is the conclusion of everything we've talked about. We are responsible for the things that happen in our lives because we have been essentially programmed that things happen to you. And you're, I have no responsibility. It's like, no, you have responsibility for everything. That's the hardest part of owning this future. And when I used to lecture on this, I remember in the beginning, so many people were so upset they'd see me after the lecture and say, Bruce, listen, I can't own responsibility for my life. You know, when I review my life, the disease, the dysfunction, I can't own that. I go, I had to change it because this woman was crying. And she said, I need a different conclusion than I am responsible for all this. I thought about it for a minute and I thought, you're personally responsible for everything in your life once you become aware that you are personally responsible for everything in your life. In other words, if you had no awareness of this and your life went off the tracks, and now I say, yeah, but you were responsible. Yeah, but you had no knowledge of it, lack of knowledge. You had no power. I can't blame you for that. You can't blame you for that. You didn't have knowledge. But once you have knowledge, now it's your job to run it in a more responsible way. So whatever is history to this new knowledge is history. Keep it as lessons. But once you get this new knowledge, you can move from here into the future and have a completely different life.
And finally, for people that don't understand Santa Cruz, where you're from,
Yeah.
and also in New Zealand, where you choose to reside some parts of the year,
Same to me, both of them.
how would you describe those places, the mentality, the culture, and why you find those places home?
I find them home because they allow a big, wide variety of thinking, and everybody's okay with any thinking you can have. There's no we can't have that thinking here. So you could be free to be yourself. The community supports each other and allowing other people to support themselves in any way they want. So it's very peaceful, very peaceful. You can be weirdo. That's what we call it. Like those bumper stickers, keep Santa Cruz weird. And it's weird, but then it's acceptable. And when it's acceptable, then you could be a weird person and be lost in a crowd. And it's very supportive of people.
And that's really important to you because you actually now, you don't frequent locations like the East Coast where the thinking isn't like that. As a matter of fact, you find that you just stay away from that energy entirely now.
Well, they don't ask me to come and I don't go. It's as simple as that. But the reality is, no, I know across the country there's different kinds of thinking, and there are places I would never want to go in this country, in that country, U.S. I mean, those people I have no connection with in the world. I mean, we're on such different wavelengths that I can't communicate with them. I mean, to me, the South is like, wow, that's strange people down there. And they look at me in California, of course, and we're strange in California. But I'd rather be strange in California.
Understood. Bruce, I always ask everyone here a few questions at the end. I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you, if you could pick up the phone and make a call to the 20-year-old Bruce,
Yeah.
give that young man a bit of advice. I guess you'd probably be in California at the time. What would you tell him? Maybe you'd be in New York still.
Oh, I was still in New York at that point. Okay. Yeah, I would say, listen, it's not as scary as you think. It's not as bad as you think. As a matter of fact, if you change your thinking, all of that can disappear. And that you're a powerful person, and you should express your life and express what you want and your desires. And as long as you're not hurting somebody, you should be free to do whatever you need to do and move through that life. And really, the biggest part of life is community, because that's our evolution anyway. Is learn how to be part of a community and work in harmony. That's the destination for all of us.
As opposed to not be that kind of lone wolf soldier that we were programmed to be as young men.
This is unfortunately a Darwinian belief system. The title of Darwin's book was On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, which probably would have sold 5 books. But the publisher, John Murray, said that's a lousy title, so he gave him the subtitle, which is On the Survival of the Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. That sold the book. And really what it is, the Darwinian world is not based on the collective, it's based on the individual. Survival of the fittest in the struggle. It's like, what about the rest of us? No, survival of the fittest. So all of a sudden, everybody's out trying to be number one and compete with each other in the negative form of competition, win-lose, which leads to the violence and wars that we have on this planet. The belief system of Darwinian theory is so wrong that it is responsible for most of the problems we have. Now, of course, here I am in United Kingdom, and I'd have to say this very sheepishly, is that
here.
Lamarck, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who wrote the theory of evolution 50 years before Darwin as the first scientist to ever write a theory of evolution, is more accurate in his world and understanding of how to behave on this planet than Darwin. Darwinian theory is, listen, science adopts what was going on in the philosophy at the time. So when you're being a scientist, whatever philosophy is going on gets, into the story. And survival of the fittest was a justification for an upper class and a lower class. The upper class were the fittest, that's where evolution comes from. And the lower class was a feeder layer, and nothing comes from there. And so it justified this two populations at the same time because that was the philosophy of the upper class. Now, the truth is, Darwin didn't really write that theory first. It was Alfred Russel Wallace, and he's the commoner. And he came up with the theory. And between Darwin and Charles Lyell, who was head of the Royal Society, they created something called the delicate arrangement. And they put Darwin's name ahead of Alfred Russel Wallace because Darwin was upper class, Wallace was common class, and it wasn't a theory that could come from common class, it had to come from upper class. So they put Darwin's name. And they had the same story. The half full, half empty glass story? Well, look at it this way. Same story. Alfred Russel Wallace, commoner, looked at it and said, evolution is driven by the elimination of the weakest. Darwin took the story and said, evolution is driven by the survival of the fittest, the strongest, okay? I go, well, they both say the same thing in one way, but it's a different world. If I had 2 planets, Darwin planet and Wallace planet, which one would I live in? I would live in the Wallace planet. Why? It's easier not to be the weakest than it is in a Darwin planet where you have to learn to be the strongest. And the strongest leads to all the violence, competition, ripping off, and all that. Why? It's built into the theory. It justified it. Yeah, we can have a couple of million Africans die of starvation, although we're throwing food out. Darwinian, they're not the fittest. That's their problem in life, and it's like, whew, justifying that kind of thing in a theory is the antithesis of our evolution.
So we have to deprogram ourselves from that. Okay.
Absolutely, because it's not a competition. It's really a community, and that's what we have to learn. Community.
And how dare you deface one of our national heroes while you're here?
I have to do that.
Now, lighting the torches outside.
But listen, I was a Darwinophile when I became a scientist. because that was, ooh, Darwin. But now it's like, oh, Darwin. It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
We're not going to survive with Darwinian theory. That's basically the cause of the problem.
Second part of that question, as far as the advice, what's the best advice you've ever received? Could it come from someone in the medical profession? Maybe not. Could it come from someone you met or something you read?
Okay, best advice I ever received were from the cells I grew in tissue culture. I observed them through a microscope. It's like through a telescope, looking at an alien world, and studying them. And when I saw how they behaved and how they worked, I thought, oh my God, we're not doing that in our lives, and we're made out of these cells. And if that's what the cells need and require, we're not fulfilling that in our world. And so I started to model my life after what the cells were teaching me. So I learned from cells.
Straight from the source. I love it. Final part is to that 20-year-old that's watching us right now, and they could be anywhere in the world, China, Africa, America, the South, Santa Cruz. What advice do you give to them if they want to transform their consciousness, if they want to kind of evolve the same way that we've watched you evolve?
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
Well, I would just tell them the same thing. A, you've been programmed, and if you don't like the program, you don't like the way it's turning out, well, then B, you can reprogram it, and you could get the things you want. We have to eliminate the fear, because fear is the biggest motivator in our planet today. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, and how much money are you going to pay? Whatever money it takes to allay any fear that I have. Money is not an object at that point. It's like, what if you didn't live in fear? It's like, wow, now you could use all that money for some good stuff. And basically it says, look at your life, just as we just talked about. Look at your life. If it's not working right, you can change this. You have to recognize if it's not working right, it's not your conscious mind that took you down that path. It was your programming. And if you change your programming, you can have a whole new life. You can get rid of virtually any disease and change your life completely by changing that programming.
Strong words indeed. Dr. Bruce Lipton, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. I was in different minds because you're messing with my brain with a lot of the things you say, because my classic training makes me question what you're saying, because by definition it's part of my programming. And yet my more evolved part of my mind realizes that something's flawed in my programming. I think deep down, all of us unconsciously know that our programming is flawed. We unconsciously kind of know something's not right, and yet we don't focus on it. We focus on all these other things. And so it's great to have you here to really get what's inside your head. The whole science and epigenetics is obviously just the tip of your iceberg, because the rest of it is all about consciousness and the way you look at the world. So thank you so much for coming on here and dropping science on us.
I really appreciate this opportunity just to put a little light in. If we just get a little light in each individual, just to say, listen, if it's not right, you are powerful enough to do something to change it and make it right. Your inaction is the problem. People, oh, that's just the way it is. I put up with it. I go, as long as you put up with it, then you have to put up with it.
Yeah. Well, my biggest takeaways are stop living in fear, because it's provoking all these wrong things in you, and it's
wrong chemistry,
and it's unfounded anyways. And the other is that if something's not working out, it's the programming. That's what it is. So you're doing it to yourself. Figure out why, and then I guess watch everything fall in place. So,
yeah.
As we say on London Real, it's about the journey. I wish you well on yours. Thank you so much for coming, and Godspeed.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, sir.